I stood in my living room, holding a checkbook I swore I'd never open for them again. My daughter sat across from me, tears streaming down her face, asking for just one more favor. My son leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, silent. And my husband just kept saying I was being selfish. They said family comes first. They said a mother's love is unconditional. But nobody told me that at 67 years old, after working my entire life, I'd still be the one paying for everyone else's mistakes. This is the story of how I learned that the people who say money isn't everything are usually the ones with their hands in your purse. Before the story begins, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. My name is Dorothy Palmer, and I'm 67 years old. For 42 years, I worked as a bookkeeper for a small manufacturing company in Ohio. I wasn't wealthy, but I was careful with every dollar. I clipped coupons, shopped clearance racks, and drove the same Honda Accord for 18 years. When my husband Frank lost his construction job during the recession and his knees got too bad to owe back, I became the sole provider. I didn't complain. That's what you do in a marriage. You carry the weight when your partner can't. I retired 3 years ago with a small pension and my Social Security. Frank gets disability now. Between the two of us, we bring in about $3,800 a month. It's not much, but we own our house outright. Paid off the mortgage 10 years early by working overtime and never taking vacations. We have enough to live on. Not extra, just enough. I thought retirement would finally be my time. I dreamed of planting tomatoes in the backyard, reading the mystery novels stacked on my nightstand, maybe joining the quilting group at church. But my family had very different ideas about what my retirement should look like. My daughter Linda is 43 years old. She's been divorced twice, currently single, and has 2 teenage boys who are good kids but expensive. My son Richard is 46, married to a woman named Brenda, who hasn't held a steady job in over a decade, and they have 4 children ranging from 7 to 16. Both of my adult children, the same children I raised to be independent and responsible, somehow decided that my modest retirement savings were their personal emergency fund. It started small, about 8 months after I retired. Linda called me on a Tuesday morning, voice trembling, saying her car had broken down and she couldn't afford the repairs. She needed $1,200. The mechanic wouldn't release her car without payment, and she needed it to get to work. I didn't even hesitate. I transferred the money that afternoon. She's my daughter. She was in trouble. That's what mothers do. 6 weeks later, Richard called. His youngest had to go to the emergency room for a broken arm, and even with insurance, they owed $1,800. The hospital was threatening to send it to collections. I wrote a check. Family comes first, right? That's what I'd always believed. And Linda needed help with her electric bill. Then Richard's wife, Brenda, needed money for school supplies for all 4 kids. Then Linda's oldest got in trouble and needed a lawyer. Then Richard's transmission went out, and Linda couldn't make rent. Then Richard needed groceries. The requests came faster and faster, like dominoes falling. At first, I kept a little notebook, writing down who borrowed what and when. I told myself they'd pay me back when things got better. But that notebook became painful to look at. The numbers climbed. 3,000, 5,000, 8,000, 12,000, and not a single dollar was ever returned. The word loan quietly transformed into gift, and I was too tired to fight it. I stopped writing things down. I stopped expecting thank you calls that lasted longer than it took to confirm the money had arrived. I just kept saying yes, because every time I even thought about saying no, the guilt crushed me. What kind of mother lets her children struggle? What kind of grandmother doesn't help when the kids need things? But something started changing inside me about 6 months ago. Little things I'd been ignoring suddenly became impossible to unsee. Tiny cracks in the story I'd been telling myself. Like when Linda called me sobbing about not being able to afford groceries. But then I saw her Facebook post 2 days later showing off a fresh set of acrylic nails and a new hairstyle. Balayage, she called it. That I knew cost at least $150. Or when Richard told me they couldn't afford winter coats for the kids. But then I visited their house and saw that Brenda had redecorated the entire living room with new furniture from Ashley Home Store. Price tag still tucked under the cushions. I'd bring it up gently, so gently. Linda, honey, I thought money was tight. Those nails must have been expensive. And she'd get defensive immediately. God, Mom, seriously? I can't do one nice thing for myself? I work hard. I deserve to feel pretty sometimes. You want me to look like a homeless person? Or I'd say to Richard, son, maybe you should return that furniture and use the money for the kids' needs. And he'd look at me like I'd slapped him. Brenda picked that out. You want me to tell my wife she can't have anything nice? You want her to be miserable? Not everyone grew up in the Depression like you, Mom. I started to feel like I was losing my mind, like I was the problem, like I was being cruel and stingy for even questioning where my money was going. Every time I tried to set a boundary, every single time, I was met with anger, tears, or the silent treatment that could last for weeks. My husband, Frank, didn't help. Whenever I tried to talk to him about it, he'd just shrug and say, "They're your kids, Dorothy. You figure it out." He'd never been good with confrontation. But I started to notice he had opinions when it benefited him. Like when Richard asked for money and I hesitated, Frank would say, "Come on, Dot. He's got 4 kids to feed. What are we saving it for anyway? We're not taking it with us." Easy for him to say. It wasn't his 42 years of work sitting in that account. The moment that changed everything happened on a cold evening in March. I was at Linda's apartment helping her fold laundry, something I did every week because she said she was too overwhelmed to keep up with it. Her boys were in their rooms playing video games. Linda was on her phone, scrolling through Instagram, barely helping. I was folding her youngest son's jeans when I found a receipt that had fallen out of a pocket. It was from a nail salon, dated 3 days ago. $89 for a full set of acrylics, plus a $20 tip. 3 days ago was the same day Linda had called me crying, saying she couldn't buy groceries and asking for $200. I'd sent it within an hour. I stood there holding that receipt, my hands shaking, the pile of laundry blurred in front of me. I felt something inside my chest twist and tighten. "Linda," I said quietly, "what's this?" She glanced up from her phone, saw the receipt, and her face immediately hardened. "Are you seriously going through my pockets?" It fell out. I wasn't. That's so invasive, Mom. God, I'm 43 years old and you're treating me like a child. You told me you couldn't afford groceries. You called me crying. I sent you money that same day. She stood up, arms crossed. And? So I'm not allowed to do anything for myself? You want me to look like trash? You want people at work to think I don't take care of myself? I want you to be honest with me. If you have money for nails, then you have money for... Get out. I blinked. What? I said get out. I don't need this judgment in my own home. I don't need you making me feel like garbage for trying to have 1 ounce of self-esteem. I left. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles turned white. Frank was asleep in his recliner when I got home. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark for 2 hours, staring at nothing. The next week, Richard called. He needed $1,500. His power was about to be shut off, he said. They'd missed 2 payments because Brenda had been sick and couldn't watch the kids. So they'd had to pay for daycare, and it all just snowballed. I was tired, so tired. But I heard myself say, I'll transfer it tomorrow. Thanks, Mom. You're a lifesaver. That Saturday, Frank wanted to drive over to Richard's house to drop off some old tools he wasn't using anymore. I went along. When we pulled up to their house, I saw something that made my stomach drop. In the driveway sat a brand new trampoline. Not new to them, brand new. Still in the box. One of those 15-foot ones with the safety net. I knew exactly how much those cost, because my neighbor had bought one last summer. $1,200. I got out of the car slowly. Richard came out of the garage, smiling. Hey, Mom, hey, Dad. I pointed at the trampoline. What's that? Oh, yeah, got it on sale. The kids are gonna go crazy when we set it up tomorrow. A sale, I repeated. My voice sounded strange, even to me. Flat, empty. Yeah, 30% off. Brenda's been wanting to get one for years. Good for the kids, you know? Get them outside more. Frank was already helping Richard unload the tools. Neither of them noticed that I'd stopped breathing normally. Richard, I said carefully, didn't you just tell me you were about to have your power shut off? He laughed. Actually laughed. Yeah, but we worked it out. Got an extension. It's all good now. So you didn't need the $1,500 I sent you? His smile faded a little. I mean, we still needed it, Mom. We've got a lot of bills. The trampoline was separate. Separate money. Yeah, where'd the separate money come from? Doesn't matter. God, Mom, why are you always interrogating me? We got the trampoline. The kids will love it. Can't you just be happy for us? I stared at my son, my firstborn. The little boy I'd rocked to sleep every night. The teenager I'd worked double shifts to buy school clothes for. The man I'd helped through 2 layoffs and a car repossession. And I didn't recognize him. I need to go, I said. Frank looked confused. We just got here. I need to go, now. We drove home in silence. Frank kept asking what was wrong. I couldn't speak. If I spoke, I'd scream. That night, I opened my laptop and looked at my bank accounts for the first time in months. Really looked. I added up every transfer, every check, every cash withdrawal I'd made for my kids over the past 2.5 years. $27,400. I sat there staring at that number until my eyes burned. $27,000. That was half of everything Frank and I had saved. Half of our safety net. Half of the cushion that was supposed to protect us if one of us got sick, or the house needed major repairs, or the car finally died. Gone. Given away. To children who treated me like an ATM and got angry when I dared to ask questions. 2 weeks later, Linda called again. She needed $800. Her landlord was threatening eviction, she said. She was 3 weeks behind on rent. She'd been working extra shifts, but the money wasn't enough, and her youngest needed new shoes, and the car needed an oil change, and everything was falling apart. I listened to her cry. I heard the desperation in her voice, and for the first time in my entire life as a mother, I felt nothing. No, I said. The line went silent. What? I said, no, Linda. I can't give you money anymore. Are you serious right now? Mom, I'm about to be evicted. Me and the boys will be on the street. You're really going to do this to us? I've given you over $15,000 in the past 2 years. I can't keep doing it. So you've been keeping track? You've been counting every dollar like some kind of miser? What happened to you? You used to care about your family. I do care, but I can't keep. You're unbelievable. Wait until Richard hears about this. Wait until everyone knows what kind of mother you really are. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my hand shaking, and I waited for the guilt to crush me like it always did. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Relief. The phone rang again 30 minutes later. It was Richard. Mom, what the hell? Linda just called me crying. She says you refuse to help her. She's about to lose her apartment. I took a breath. Richard, I've been helping for years. I can't anymore. Can't or won't. There's a difference, Mom. She's your daughter. She's got 2 kids. What's wrong with you? I've given her over $15,000 in 2 years. You've gotten about $12,000. I'm retired. That money was supposed to last Frank and me. Oh, so now you're counting? You're really going to sit there and tally up everything you've spent on your own children, like we're strangers? That's cold, Mom. That's really cold. I'm not trying to be cold. I'm trying to survive. Survive? He laughed bitterly. You own your house. You've got pension and Social Security. Dad gets disability. You're fine. Linda's about to be homeless. But sure, you're the one who needs to survive. Richard, you just bought a $1,200 trampoline. Silence. That was different. How? How was it different? Because the kids needed it. They're stuck inside all the time. They needed something to do. What? You want them to be miserable? You want them to have no childhood? I want you to prioritize. If you have money for a trampoline, you has money for your bills. You don't understand our life, Mom. You don't understand what it's like raising 4 kids today. Everything costs more. School, food, clothes. It's not like when you raised us. You're right. When I raised you, I worked 2 jobs and never asked my parents for a dime, because they didn't have a dime to give. Well, congratulations on being perfect. Not all of us are like you. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen, still holding the phone, and felt the crack inside me spread wider. Frank came in from the garage. Who is that? Richard. What'd he want? To yell at me for not giving Linda money. Frank sighed and opened the refrigerator. Why didn't you just give it to her? Now there's going to be drama. I turned to look at my husband. Really look at him. Frank, I've given them $27,000 in 2 years. He pulled out a beer. So? That's half our savings. We don't need that much. We're not going anywhere. What are we saving it for? For emergencies, for when the roof needs replacing, or the furnace dies, or one of us gets sick. You worry too much. He popped open the beer. They're our kids. We're supposed to help them. They're not kids. They're in their 40s. They've got kids. That's expensive. Then maybe they should stop spending money on trampolines and nail salons. Frank's face hardened. Linda works hard. She deserves to feel pretty. You want her to walk around looking like a homeless person? It was the exact same thing Linda had said, word for word. I realized then that they'd all been talking about me, comparing notes, building a narrative where I was the villain. I'm going to bed, I said quietly. It's 7 o'clock. I'm tired. I wasn't tired. I was furious. But I didn't have the words for it yet. The next 3 days, my phone didn't ring once. Not Linda, not Richard, not even Frank's sister Karen, who usually called every Sunday. The silence was deliberate. They were freezing me out. On the 4th day, I got a text from Linda. The boys asked why Grandma doesn't love them anymore. I didn't know what to tell them. My hands shook as I read it. She was using my grandsons as weapons, trying to gut me with guilt. I typed back, I love them very much. This has nothing to do with them. No response. That afternoon, I was pulling weeds in my small front garden when my neighbor Helen came over. She was 72, a widow, and we'd been friends for 15 years. Dorothy, can I ask you something? Of course. She hesitated. I saw Linda's Facebook post. I wasn't going to say anything, but I think you should see it. My stomach dropped. What post? Helen pulled out her phone and showed me. Linda had written a long paragraph about how hard it was to be a single mother, how expensive everything was, how she was doing her best, but sometimes it wasn't enough. And then, it's especially hard when the people who are supposed to love you most turn their backs on you. When your own mother chooses money over her grandchildren. Praying for strength during this difficult time. 47 comments. All of them sympathetic. All of them saying what a strong woman she was. Several from people I knew. People from church, neighbors, family friends. And not one of them knew the truth. I handed Helen back her phone. My face was hot. She's lying. I figured, I know you, Dorothy, but other people don't know that. They're believing her. I felt sick. What do I do? That's up to you, but if it were me, I'd set the record straight. You don't deserve this. I didn't respond to the post. I didn't defend myself, because the truth was, I didn't know how. How do you tell people you've given your daughter $15,000 without sounding like you're bragging? How do you explain that she spent money on nails while claiming she couldn't eat without sounding cruel? I couldn't win, so I stayed silent. 2 days later, Richard showed up at my door unannounced. Brenda was with him. Frank was at his VA appointment, so I was alone. We need to talk, Richard said as he walked past me into the living room without being invited. Brenda sat on my couch like she owned it. Richard stood with his arms crossed. Linda's about to lose her apartment, he said. The eviction notice came. She's got 1 week. I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry? That's all you've got? She's your daughter, Mom. I know who she is. Brenda leaned forward. Mrs. Palmer, I have to be honest with you. This is really disappointing. Family is supposed to help family. When Richard and I have been struggling, you've always been there. But now Linda needs you, and you're just abandoning her. I looked at this woman who hadn't worked in a decade, who redecorated her living room while asking me for grocery money, who is sitting in my house judging me. Brenda, I've given you and Richard $12,000 in 2 years. She blinked. That's not. We've paid some of that back. No, you haven't. Not $1. We've been meaning to. Things have just been tight. But not too tight for a $1,200 trampoline. Her face flushed red. That was for the kids. And the new living room furniture? That was on sale. And the vacation to Florida last summer? Richard stepped forward. Okay, stop. Just stop. You're really going to throw everything in our faces? Every little thing we've ever done? I'm not throwing anything. I'm explaining why I can't keep giving. Can't or won't. Both. Richard's jaw clenched. You know what? Fine. We don't need your money. We'll figure it out on our own, like we always do. But don't come crying to us when you're old and alone and need someone to take care of you. The words hit me like a slap. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Excuse me? I said get out, both of you. Brenda stood up, grabbing her purse. This is unbelievable. You're choosing money over your own family. No, I said, my voice shaking now. You're choosing money over me. You've been doing it for years. You just didn't notice, because I kept saying yes. They left, slamming the door behind them. I sat down on the couch and stared at nothing. My whole body was trembling. This was my son, my firstborn, the baby I'd held in my arms, and he just threatened me, told me I'd die alone. When Frank came home 2 hours later, I was still sitting there. You okay? He asked. Richard was here. Yeah? What'd he want? To threaten me. Frank set down his keys. What are you talking about? I told him everything. The conversation, the threats, the way Brenda had sat in our living room and lectured me about family. Frank was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, maybe you should just give Linda the money. I turned to look at him. What? Just give her the money. End all this drama. It's not worth it. Frank, I've given them $27,000. I know. You keep saying that number like it means something. But Dorothy, they're our kids. What are we going to do with that money anyway? Sit on it until we die? It's our safety net. It's supposed to protect us. From what? We're fine. The house is paid off. We've got income. Stop being so paranoid. I stared at my husband of 44 years and realized he didn't understood. He'd never understood. To him, I was just being difficult, stingy, mean. I'm going to Linda's apartment tomorrow, he said. I'm going to give her a check for the rent. With what money? Our money. Frank, you can't. It's my money too, Dorothy. I get a say. And I say we help our daughter. He walked out of the room. I sat there in the silence and felt something inside me finally break. Not crack. Break. The next morning I called my bank. I opened a separate savings account. I transferred half of what was left in our joint savings, about $14,000, into the new account. Only my name on it. Frank could give away his half if he wanted, but he wasn't touching mine. When he found out 2 days later, he exploded. You did what? You took money out of our joint account without telling me? I took my half. You still have access to yours. This is a marriage, Dorothy. We share everything. Then why don't they share anything with us? Why is it only going one direction? Because we're the parents. That's how it works. They're not children anymore. They're struggling. So are we? We're just better at hiding it. Frank stared at me like he'd never seen me before. I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm the woman who's been holding this family together for 40 years while everyone took and took and took. And I'm tired, Frank. I'm so tired. He didn't say anything. He just walked out and didn't come home until after midnight. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and wondered how it had come to this. How love had turned into transactions. How family had turned into obligation. How I'd become the villain for wanting to keep what I'd earned. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. Dad told me what you did. Hiding money from your own family. You should be ashamed of yourself. I turned off my phone, and for the first time in 3 years, I slept through the night. The silence lasted 4 days. 4 days of no calls, no texts, no contact from either of my children. Frank barely spoke to me. He ate dinner in front of the TV, slept on his side of the bed with his back turned, and left for his morning coffee before I woke up. The house felt like a tomb. On the 5th day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mrs. Palmer? This is West Side Property Management. I'm calling about your daughter, Linda Morrison. My heart sank. What about her? She listed you as an emergency contact. She was evicted this morning. She left some belongings behind, and we need someone to collect them, or they'll be disposed of tomorrow. Can you come by? I closed my eyes. What happened to her and the boys? I'm not sure, ma'am. She didn't say where she was going. I drove to Linda's apartment complex in a fog. The manager let me into the unit. It was empty except for a few boxes stacked by the door. Photo albums, some dishes, a lamp I'd given her for Christmas 3 years ago. Everything else was gone. I loaded the boxes into my car and tried calling Linda. Straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Nothing. I called Richard. He answered on the 4th ring. What? Richard, where's your sister? Why do you care? Please, I just want to know if she's safe. He sighed heavily. She's staying with a friend. The boys are with their dad for a few weeks until she figures things out. Relief flooded through me. Okay, thank you. You know this is your fault, right? The relief evaporated. Excuse me? She needed $800. $800. You could have helped her, but you chose not to. So yeah, Mom, this is on you. Richard, I gave her $15,000. Oh my God, stop. Stop throwing that number around like it makes you a saint. You know what? I've been thinking about all the things you didn't pay for. All the times you said you couldn't afford things when we were kids. All the times we went without. Where was all this money then? We didn't have it then. I was working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. But you had enough to save, apparently. Enough to hoard away while your kids wore secondhand clothes and we never took a single vacation. I pulled the car over, My hands were shaking too hard to drive. Are you seriously blaming me for being poor? I'm blaming you for choosing yourself over us. Then and now. I never chose myself. I chose survival. I chose keeping the electricity on and the rent paid. And I'm doing the same thing now. No, you're being selfish. And Linda's homeless because of it. Linda's homeless because she spent rent money on nail appointments and God knows what else. That's a lie. Richard, I saw the receipts. I saw the Facebook posts. She was out to dinner while telling me she couldn't eat. You know what, Mom? I'm done. Linda's done. We're both done with you. The line went dead. I sat in my parked car outside Linda's old apartment and cried for the first time in months. Not gentle tears. Ugly, gasping sobs that shook my entire body. I cried for my daughter, for my son, for the family I thought I had, but apparently never did. I cried because I'd worked my entire life to give them better, and somehow I was the villain. When I got home, Frank was in the kitchen making a sandwich. Linda got evicted, I said. He didn't look up. I know. Richard called me. You knew? Yeah. And you didn't tell me? What was I supposed to say? You made your choice. I stood there, dripping with rain I hadn't even noticed falling, and looked at my husband. Do you blame me too? He finally met my eyes. I think you could have prevented this. By giving her money I don't have? You have it. You're just choosing not to share it. It's supposed to be for emergencies. For us. Your daughter being homeless isn't an emergency? She's not homeless. She's at a friend's house. Because her own mother wouldn't help her. I felt something snap. I gave her $15,000, Frank. $15,000. How much more should I have given? 20? 30? My entire retirement? At what point am I allowed to say no? Family doesn't keep score. Then why am I the only one giving? Because you're the parent. That's what parents do. They're in their 40s. They're still our kids. We stood there, screaming at each other in our kitchen, and I realized this wasn't about Linda or Richard anymore. This was about 44 years of Frank letting me carry everything. Every financial decision, every hard choice, every sacrifice. It had all been on me. And now that I was finally pushing back, he couldn't handle it. I'm going to my sister's, I said. Fine. Right away. I'm not running. I'm leaving before I say something I can't take back. I threw some clothes in a bag and drove 2 hours to my sister Patricia's house. She was 69, widowed 5 years ago, and had always been the strong one. When I showed up at her door crying, she pulled me inside without a word. I told her everything. The money, the lies, the Facebook posts, Richard's threats, Frank's coldness. I showed her my bank statements, my notebooks, the text messages. I laid it all out like evidence in a trial. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "They're not going to change. Even after all this, even if you hold your ground, they're going to keep believing you're the problem. I know. And Frank's not going to back you up. I know that too." She reached across and took my hand. "So what are you going to do?" I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, but I'm done apologizing for wanting to survive. I stayed with Patricia for 3 days. Frank called twice. I didn't answer. Linda sent one text, "Hope you're happy." Richard sent nothing. On the 4th day, Patricia sat me down at her kitchen table. "I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." "What?" Karen called me. Karen was Frank's sister. What did she want? She wanted me to convince you to stop being stubborn and help your kids. My stomach turned. What did you say? I told her to mind her own business. But Dorothy, she said everyone's talking about it. The whole family. Frank's been calling people, telling them you've changed, that you've become cold and money obsessed. Linda's been posting on Facebook. Richard's been telling anyone who listened that you've abandoned them. I felt the walls closing in. So I'm the villain now. To everyone. To people who don't know the truth. Yes. Should I defend myself? Should I post my bank statements? Show everyone what I've actually done? Patricia shook her head. You could. But then you look defensive. Like you're trying to justify yourself. And you decide their opinion matters more than your peace. I went home that evening. Frank was watching TV in the living room. I sat down next to him. We need to talk, I said. He muted the TV. I'm listening. I'm not giving them any more money. Not Linda. Not Richard. Not unless there's a genuine emergency. And they can prove they've exhausted every other option. Dorothy. I'm not finished. I've put $14,000 in a separate account. That's mine. You can do what you want with your half. Give it away. Light it on fire. I don't care. But you're not touching mine. This is ridiculous. No. What's ridiculous is that I worked for 42 years and I'm supposed to spend my retirement funding everyone else's poor choices. They're not making poor choices. They're struggling. Frank, Linda spent rent money on nails. Richard bought a trampoline while claiming he couldn't pay his electric bill. Those are choices. You don't know their whole situation. I know enough. And I'm done. He looked at me for a long moment. This is going to tear the family apart. The family's already torn apart. I'm just refusing to bleed for it anymore. We sat in silence. Then Frank said quietly, I don't know if I can live like this. With all this tension. My heart dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we need some space. To figure things out. You want a separation? Because I won't give away our retirement savings? I want my wife back. The woman who cared about her family. I am that woman. I've always been that woman. I'm just not willing to destroy myself to prove it anymore. Frank stood up. I'm going to bed. He walked away, leaving me sitting alone in the living room. The next morning, I got a Facebook message from someone I hadn't spoken to in 20 years. A woman from church named Diane. I saw Linda's posts. I just want you to know that some of us understand what you're going through. My daughter did the same thing to me. It took me going completely broke before I finally said no. Don't make my mistake. Protect yourself. Then another message came. From Helen, my neighbor. Just checking on you. I've been praying for you. Then another. From a cousin I barely knew. Family isn't supposed to bleed you dry. Stand your ground. I realized something then. I wasn't completely alone. There were other people, other mothers, other grandmothers who had been through this. Who understood. Who knew that love and money aren't the same thing, even though people try to make them identical. That afternoon, Richard called. I answered. I need to borrow your truck, he said. No greeting, no apology. For what? Linda's moving her stuff to a storage unit. Dad said I could use your truck. Frank doesn't make that decision. It's my truck. Seriously? You're going to deny her this too? I'm not denying anyone anything. I'm just not participating. You're unbelievable. Your own daughter is in crisis, and you won't even loan your truck? Richard, you told me you were done with me. You said Linda was done with me. So I'm respecting that. You're done. I'm not your emergency contact anymore. Silence. You can't mean that. I do. I love you. I love Linda. I love my grandchildren. But I'm done being used. We're not using you. Yes, you are. And the worst part is, you genuinely don't see it. You think you're entitled to my money because I'm your mother. But I'm a person too, Richard. I have needs too, and I'm choosing to protect those needs. This is insane. You've lost your mind. Maybe. Or maybe I finally found it. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just clear. For the first time in 3 years, I could see clearly. That night, Frank told me he was going to stay with his sister for a while. Until you come to your senses, he said. Okay, I said. He looked surprised, like he expected me to beg him to stay. But I didn't. I just helped him pack a bag and walked him to the door. After he left, I sat in my quiet house, my paid-off house that I'd worked 42 years to own, and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. It didn't mean I wasn't sad. It didn't mean I didn't miss my children, my husband, the family I thought I had, but it meant I finally understood that setting myself on fire to keep others warm wasn't love. It was just slow suicide. And I wasn't doing it anymore. 3 weeks passed. Frank stayed at his sister's house. Linda stopped posting about me on Facebook, but didn't reach out. Richard sent one text, "Hope you're enjoying your money." I didn't respond. The silence was hard at first. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Wondering if I should apologize, transfer money, fix everything. But then I'd remember the receipts, the lies, the trampoline, the nail appointments. I'd remember Richard's threat that I'd die alone, and the urge to apologize would fade. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I went to the library and checked out mystery novels. I joined the quilting group at church, the same one I'd been putting off for 3 years because I didn't have time. I planted tomatoes and peppers in my backyard. I bought myself a new pair of glasses without feeling guilty about the cost. One afternoon, I was weeding my garden when Helen came over with iced tea. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you've been carrying something heavy and you finally put it down." I smiled. "That's exactly what it feels like. Have you heard from them?" "No, not really." "Do you miss them?" I thought about it. I miss who I thought they were. I don't miss what they became. Helen nodded. "My daughter did this to me 15 years ago. Bled me dry. I finally cut her off, and she didn't speak to me for 2 years. You know what changed?" "What?" "She ran out of other people to use. When everyone else finally saw through her, she came back. Not to apologize. She never apologized. But she came back. Different. More careful. Like she finally understood I wasn't an ATM. Did it get better?" "It got different. We have a relationship now, but it's not what it was. There are boundaries. She knows if she asks for money, the answer is no. And because she knows that, she stopped asking." "Do you regret cutting her off?" Helen looked at me seriously. "Not for 1 second. It saved my life. And honestly, I think it saved hers too. She finally had to grow up." That conversation stayed with me for days. 4 weeks after Frank left, he came home. I was reading on the couch when I heard his key in the door. He walked in carrying his duffel bag, looking tired. "Can I come back?" he asked. I set down my book. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're coming back to support me or to pressure me into giving them money." He set the bag down and sat in his recliner. "Karen's been lecturing me for 3 weeks straight, telling me what a fool I'm being, telling me you worked your whole life and deserve to protect what's yours." "You needed your sister to tell you that?" "I needed someone to say it out loud. I was so focused on the kids that I forgot about you, about us." He looked at me, really looked at me. "I'm sorry, Dorothy. I should have had your back." "Yes, you should have." "I know." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I said, "Things can't go back to how they were. I know. If they ask for money, the answer is no, From both of us, no discussion. Frank nodded slowly. What if there's a real emergency? Then we evaluate it together. We see proof. We make sure they've tried everything else first. But Frank, our real emergency isn't a nail appointment. It's not a trampoline. It's not a Facebook vacation. Agreed. And if you ever take their side over mine again, I'm done. I mean it. I'll leave. He flinched. Understood. Okay. I picked my book back up. You can stay. It wasn't a warm reunion. It wasn't romantic. But it was honest. And that was enough. 2 months after everything fell apart, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom? It was Linda. My heart clenched. Hi, sweetheart. She paused. I could hear her breathing. I got an apartment, a smaller one. The boys are back with me. That's good. I'm glad you're safe. I've been working extra shifts, double shifts on weekends. I'm making it work. I'm proud of you. Silence, then quietly. I'm sorry. I wasn't expecting that. For what? For the Facebook posts, for blaming you, for everything. Her voice cracked. I was angry and scared, and I lashed out at the one person who'd always been there. And I'm sorry. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you for saying that. I'm not asking for money. I want you to know that. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I wanted you to know I'm okay. And I'm sorry. I appreciate that. Really. Can I come visit sometime? Bring the boys? They miss you. I thought about all the boundaries I'd set, all the walls I'd built, and I realized that boundaries weren't about keeping people out forever. They were about protecting yourself while you figured out if people could be trusted again. Yes, I said. I'd like that. We talked for 20 more minutes. Not about money, not about the past, just about the boys, about her job, about small normal things. When we hung up, I felt something shift. Not back to how it was, we'd never go back to that, but forward, towards something new. Richard never apologized. He sent a birthday card 2 months later with no note inside, just his signature. It was something, not much, but something. Frank and I started going to counseling. We talked about money, about boundaries, about 44 years of unspoken resentments. It was hard. There were sessions where I wanted to walk out, but slowly we started rebuilding something stronger than what we'd had before. 6 months after I said no, I ran into Diane at the grocery store, the woman from church who'd messaged me on Facebook. You're still standing, she said, smiling. I am. Good. That means you did the right thing. It doesn't always feel like the right thing. The right thing rarely does. That's how you know it's right. I thought about that a lot, about how doing what's best for you often feels selfish until you realize that destroying yourself doesn't help anyone. About how you can love people and still refuse to let them destroy you. About how family isn't supposed to bleed you dry. And if it does, maybe the problem isn't you. I think about Linda working double shifts now, providing for her boys without asking me for help. I think about how she's becoming the woman I always hoped she'd be, not because I gave her everything, but because I finally said no. I think about the $14,000 still sitting in my private account, my safety net, my peace of mind, the thing that lets me sleep at night. And I don't feel guilty. And me too, baby, me too. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house, my paid-off house, my safe house, and felt something I'd been searching for my whole life. Not happiness, exactly. Not the fairy tale ending where everyone reconciles and everything's perfect. But something better, something real. I felt like myself again. The woman who worked 42 years and earned every dollar. The woman who raised 2 children and did her best, even when her best wasn't perfect. The woman who learned, at 67 years old, that you can love people without setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. They said money isn't everything, and they're right. It isn't. But self-respect is. Peace is. The ability to look at yourself in the mirror and know you made the right choice, even when everyone told you it was wrong. That's everything. So when they said money isn't everything, I should have said, you're right. But neither am I. And I finally learned that my survival matters too. I'm 67 years old. I'm not rich. I'm not perfect. I have regrets and scars, and relationships that will never be what they were. But I'm standing. I'm here. I survived. And that's more than enough. But self-respect is. Peace is. The ability to look at yourself in the mirror and know you made the right choice, even when everyone told you it was wrong. That's everything. So when they said money wasn't everything, I should have said, you're right, but neither am I. And I finally learned that my survival matters too. I'm 67 years old. I'm not rich. I'm not perfect. I have regrets and scars and relationships that will never be what they were. But I'm standing. I'm here. I survived. And that's more than enough. Here's my question for you. If you were in Dorothy's shoes, if your own children were treating your retirement like their personal bank account while spending money on luxuries, would you have said no sooner? Or would you have kept giving, hoping they'd change? Tell me in the comments what you would have done differently, because I think we all need to hear these stories. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is what finally gives you permission to protect yourself. Total saint. Here's my question for you. If you were in Dorothy's shoes, if your own children were treating your retirement like their personal bank account while spending money on luxuries, would you have said no sooner? Or would you have kept giving, hoping they'd change? Tell me in the comments what you would have done differently, because I think we all need to hear these stories. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is what finally gives you permission to protect yourself.